Should you buy a new used car or should you stick with the old one and simply repair it? This is a common question that I get from my subscribers, so let me answer this. Stay tuned. Before we continue, please consider subscribing, hitting the like button, or simply leaving a comment down below so we can continue this discussion in the comment section. What I really want to talk about today is a common dilemma that people have. Should you buy a new used car or should you stick with the old one that you have and simply keep repairing it? For a very old car, if it costs $3,000 or $4,000, is it justifiable to spend, let's say, $1,000 of repair, or should you simply buy a new used car? As we know, buying a brand new car automatically puts you in a position where you lose a lot of the value as soon as that car leaves the lot. But what about used cars? Can you justify buying a new used car to replace your existing used car? That's also a very tough question, and let me try to answer it. First of all, it's a good practice to never buy a car which is more than half of your annual net income. So if you're making, let's say, a $45,000 a year, and that's not net, probably net is a little bit less, you should not be buying cars which is like $20,000 or more, because simply you can't afford it. Be honest with yourself, you can't afford it. Another rule of thumb is when you buy a car, don't be emotional, don't rush it. Before you do any moves, think about this. And I've talked about this before. How long does it take you to make that money that you're about to spend? And how long does it take you to actually decide whether to spend it for repair or for a new used car? What I would rather encourage you is familiarize yourself with what is the next model and make of a car you want to buy, and really understand the specifics about this car. Which year of that car is a successful kind of generation for that make and model? What are the most common problems? What does it cost to repair it? That's very, very important. Some of the cars are more expensive to repair. Let's say German cars in general cost more to repair than, let's say, a Honda Accord or Civic or Toyota Camry. Also, what's going to be your car insurance for that new used car compared to your old car? Your old car probably is going to cost less to insure than a new $10,000 used car. So all of those things, they form a more of a comprehensive view before you make that decision. And keeping in mind that cars lose value all the time, the most important thing for you is your financial goals, and that is to reach a financial independent state of freedom where you don't have to live paycheck to paycheck. So if you don't have money cash, my advice is don't buy the car. Wait a little bit longer until you've saved up the cash, because the moment you take another loan, that's gonna cost you more than the actual loan, and you're gonna again end up being in debt. As we know, debt has a tendency to grow, and life happens, so we want to prevent to come into debt. Rather, we want to live within our means and only pay for things cash. Now, if you're somebody that has moved up in your job, you're making a lot more, by all means, if you've got the cash, buy the next car, buy a better used car. I'm all for it, as long as you can afford it. So I would say the best practice is not to think of necessarily buying a better new used car. The best practice is see what you can do for the next 6, 9 months, a year maybe. See if you can repair that car and get by for the next year, when you're gonna be more disciplined and putting money aside to actually save for that better used car. And then maybe after a year, once you're ready, after you've been putting aside for retirement, emergency fund, and then you've got the accumulated cash, then buy the used car with cash. For the most part, most of the time, a repaired car you would come out financially ahead than simply getting a new used car. Let me tell you why. Typically, people would get a new used car, and generally they would go for a better car. They're not gonna buy the same model, the same make, same year. They're gonna buy something newer, something with less miles, obviously, and it's logical. But oftentimes, due to the emotional decision of buying a new used car, people actually jump to a model which they can't afford. So let's say somebody is using a $3,000 car now. They say, okay, it breaks down too often. I'm gonna buy my next used car and it's gonna be a much better car. Let's say I'm gonna buy a $9,000 car. That's typically the case. The issue here is that you can buy, and it's gonna be a better car if you buy a $9,000 car, but the question is, can you really afford it? And the way to answer that question is, I'm gonna ask to you, do you have $9,000 cash? If you do, then you can afford a new used car worth $9,000. But, there is always a but. Also, when you say, I do have the $9,000 to buy a new used car, please consider, the rule of thumb is, when we put from every paycheck and paycheck, we pay ourselves first, we save, we put money aside. What we do is we put first an emergency fund together for the next 6 or 9 months. So when you say, I've got the $9,000 saved, is that after you've put together your emergency fund and then on top, you've got the $9,000 saved? Answer that question and that's gonna really tell you if you can afford it. What we wanna prioritize with our spending is first and foremost is the amount of money that we're putting aside for retirement. So that's what we pay ourselves first. So we put that money aside, then we establish an emergency fund. Once that's established, then we see how much we're putting, with every paycheck for things that we actually need. And again, if at that point you have the $9,000, then it's okay to buy a $9,000 new used car. But most of the times what people do is, your car breaks down too often, you need to come up with $1,000 to repair it, and you're saying, I don't really have $1,000 to repair it, but I'm gonna somehow magically find the $9,000 to buy a new used car. And most of the time, people actually they opt in for a loan, and this is what, in this channel, we don't encourage you to do. We don't encourage you to take any loan when it comes to putting money for vehicles and anything that loses value with time. So with that said, I will see you in the next episode, but please consider subscribing, hit the like button, smash the like button, and I'll talk to you in the next video.